just a moment. So the last speaker had one point, basically. The point was that if we show women as being feminine, if we focus on these feminine qualities, then women won't think, or rather, like women won't think that, women will think that they have to be feminine in order to succeed. They'll think that they need to conform to existing stereotypes of what it needs to be feminine to succeed, because the only successful women they've seen were women who were highly, highly feminine based on the way the media portrayed them. The thing is, they can't offer a good counter paradigm of how women will be able to think that they can become successful if feminine qualities are not also seen as being valuable in the context of a society where very many women are raised to be feminine by their parents. I'll give you an example. If you have been raised to be a very feminine woman, and you do not feel that you can be masculine, if you are not told that feminine qualities can also lead to success, you will not think that you have the qualities to be successful. You may not be able to conform to the male paradigm. You may not even want to conform to the male paradigm. You might like being feminine, right? And that, again, is the implicit assumption on their side of the house, is that being masculine is better than being feminine. They're saying feminine things like breaking down and stuff, right? What we say is that feminine qualities also have inherent goods, and that we want to celebrate those as well. But moreover, like, what we think is that if we don't focus on the feminine qualities of women, no one will take them into consideration. Imagine an example in which men are always praised for being masculine, and women are praised for being masculine, and like also sometimes we point out feminine things, but like I guess most of the time we're focusing on their masculine things, right? People think that those feminine qualities are irrelevant to her success, right? She had masculine qualities, therefore she was able to succeed. I can only succeed if I also have masculine qualities, because the dominant norm is that successful people are masculine. In the context of when most Fortune 500 CEOs are men, in the context of when most politicians are men, the dominant idea is that masculine qualities lead to success. And so if we do not show that feminine qualities can also uniquely lead to success, no one will believe that they will. And they'll think that women who are successful, when they're shown like equally, they're successful not because the feminine qualities were helpful, but because they were in possession of masculine qualities. So to be successful, I also need to possess masculine qualities. So we think that that point does not stand up. What I'm going to bring you today is why we want our leaders to be feminine, why we would prefer a good portion of our leaders to be in possession of feminine qualities, and why we think this will lead to better outcomes in business and in politics, and why we think in the long run it will make it also acceptable for men to have feminine qualities, because once you link success both to femininity and to masculinity, it makes it acceptable for all kinds of people to have either kind of quality. So my first point, why we need more feminine features, traditionally feminine qualities in business. Let's think about how business works. Business isn't always rational. People behave the way they think they're expected to behave, right? What we get are these hyper-aggressive industries, things like M&A, things like investment banking, things like hyper-destructive CEOs. And we think that these things actually create a massive amount of harm when they don't have to. I'll give the example of Jack Welch, the CEO of GE, who's called Neutron Jack, right? Basically, he made his name by firing people, by shutting down businesses, and by kicking people out of work. And people thought, that's amazing. Look at all the people he's firing. Look at how destructive he is. Isn't he so masculine and impressive, right? Contrary to this, we say, I'll give you another example. The CEO of Costco was a woman for a very long time, right? And she pursued a completely different strategy. She only fired people when she had to. She only shut down businesses when she had to. And she was belated by the press. And look at this feminine CEO. She can't lead. She's not firing people when she needs to. She's not being a capitalist. But if you look at Costco's stock price versus GE's stock price looked like this. Okay? And Costco's stock price enterprise look like this. Okay? We think that this shows that there is an incredibly valuable thing to having leaders being comfortable being feminine, whether they're men or women, and possessing these qualities. I'll give you another example. He talked about the PM of Thailand crying. I wish to God that George Bush had cried when he invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, that freaking cowboy, and sentenced hundreds of thousands of people to their death because let's go get them. Let's go snake them out of their rabbit holes, right? We can do it. Oh yeah, we're masculine American men. We have a military. We can beat them, right? I wish to God our leaders had feminine qualities because we think that that would have created much more benefit, much better political outcomes in those cases. My next one, I'll take a POI if anyone wants to give one. Yeah.
Because of the way that feminist qualities are portrayed within the media, how do you expect these Fortune 500 companies to hire people which were portrayed as loving cooking, liking to shopping? How would they shift their mindset?
Because these women are already successful. That's why they're being portrayed. If we're portraying successful people as feminine, then we know that feminine people can be successful, okay? That's how the model works. If we see in the media all the time these successful women having feminine qualities, we now think that those qualities are compatible with success and we're willing to let those people into our companies. On the contrary, if we never focus on the power of those feminine qualities to lead to success, then when these companies interview a feminine woman, say she looks very feminine, she has a lot of makeup on, she's wearing very feminine clothes, they think, this woman can't lead, this woman can't do the job, she's not masculine enough. Maybe she should be at home, right? And they pick someone else who has more masculine qualities. And so we think by linking these feminine qualities to success, we open up opportunities for women overall. And that in the long run, it kind of reduces this gender neutrality, this gender dichotomy, right? Because men or women can be comfortable being masculine or feminine. Let's think about feminine men, right? What happens to them? We think this is great for them. They're not no longer pressured to be masculine. They can be feminine if they want to, and they can be successful, right? So we think that this opens up opportunity across the spectrum. So what have we shown you today? We've shown you, first of all, that his analysis about how harmful it is to show women as being feminine that doesn't really hold up. Because the dominant masculine paradigm means that people will never respect those qualities unless we focus on them. I've shown you that for business and politics, we think it's great if our leaders are more willing to be feminine, that this will lead to better outcomes. This can only happen if we create a paradigm where we can link those qualities explicitly to success. And for those reasons, we are very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for her speech. Just to note, you guys can hold the microphone if you want. You don't have to crouch. And I call upon the government whip to hear a speech in 7 minutes. Here.
Whoa. The fundamental mistake coming from side opposition is that they have assumed that all women would actually possess the traditionally feminine features that society has dictated. We think that side opposition's case would apply if women did in fact possess all those feminine qualities. Because what side opposition is actually doing is that it's prioritizing one sex's traditional roles and qualities over another sex, because at the end of the day, they think that those can be much more successful. But the fact of the matter is, a woman is able to possess both qualities at the same time. And the paradigm in which a side opposition propagates in today's debate, at the end of the day, marginalizes women who do not possess those feminine qualities. And we think at the end of the day, if you would like to glorify these feminine qualities, that's something that's not going to work at the end of the day, but rather you need to draw the focus towards the qualities that make a human being successful, rather than what makes a man or a woman successful at the end of the day. Now, before I move on to my cash points, I'd like to start by making a few rebuttals, right? Because we heard this sort of a rhetoric coming from my opposition, that we're prioritizing the male features over the female. We think that that's completely preposterous, because that's not what we're doing, right? We're simply asserting that right now in the status quo, that is the case. but we think that it's time that we need to focus more and shift the emphasis, because we need to battle the direction that society is going towards, right? If these qualities that are viewed as traditionally male are being viewed as dominant to features that are traditionally female, then we need to counter that direction by making sure that such a pervasive and influential channel as the media is willing to take on the role of not placing unnecessary emphasis on feminine qualities that might have not been the reason these women became successful. This is the thing that we need to focus in today's debate, because we think that at the end of the day, the fact that Aung San Suu Kyi became successful wasn't because she's really emotional or that because she's a woman, but at the end of the day, it's because of her qualities, assertiveness and intelligence in terms of governing and her belief in democracy, and we think that those sorts of things are not directly linked to the feminine features that the emphasis of the media is often tacit upon. Now, my second rebuttal is on the concept of his whole line of argumentation on why he would love it if the traditional female features are something that people are more willing to adopt, right? The problem is this: we think that under the status quo, those sorts of qualities will never actually be accepted and preferred at the end of the day, right? Because there are still rhetorics like "we wish Bush was more emotional." This is precisely why we need to propose this motion. Because at the end of the day, if there are still people utilizing the feminine features, no thank you, as something to raise sympathy and to at the end of the day be shed a negative light on, then that's something that's problematic. Because these sorts of stigmas still exist in today's society. That's why it's necessary for us to make sure that the media is doing its best, or we are opposing the media's mistakes in emphasizing on the wrong points of why successful women did get to the point that they are today. Now, moving on to my first class point. Yes, I take your point.
If femininity isn't ever going to be accepted, then how do the women with the traditional female qualities achieve or notice that they can succeed only with these qualities?
Here's what we're trying to say in today's debate, right? We think that right now, women already receive a lot of societal pressure in terms of pursuing those feminine features. They don't need that much more incentive or that support in terms of people who are already feminine, right? I think the problems in today's debate is that there are women who do not possess those qualities, or women who are too scared, no thank you, to pursue those sorts of lifestyle or to become more ambitious or more competitive, because society will view or look at them in a bad light, right? Because that goes directly to the concept of self-actualization. These women are unable to develop the potentials that they actually possess because they're scared of how people will view them. Now, moving on to my clash point, right? Why is there a need for the opposition of the emphasis of the feminine in the media, right? Because we think that under the opposition's paradigm, you're only perpetuating the gender norms that you yourself don't think exist, right? Because we think that those sort of social construct does exist in the societies today, and we think that it's time for us to break down those boundaries, because if we keep viewing these qualities as something that's specific to men or women, then there will never be a day where we actually look at these women or individuals as, no thank you, the qualities that they actually possess, right? Because oftentimes these women did not become successful because of these feminine features, and putting more emphasis on that would be a distortion of the accomplishments that they have actually achieved. I mean, I don't think that that's something that's desirable. Now, moving on to my second clash point, right, on how do women actually achieve this self-actualization, because we think side opposition has been ignoring these things all along. No, thank you. Because we've talked about the practical consequences and harms that derive from people not realizing the equality of the both sexes, right? We talked about the problems of slut-shaming or the over-sexualization of women that exists because people think that fundamentally the two sexes are different, and that's not true. It's only true because you're perpetuating this, this distinguishment that there are qualities that men possess, that women possess, and those are things that are desirable in one case or another. We don't think that that's something that we can support in today's debate, because the only way that we can change, and no thank you, the societal conduct that we have proposed as problems in today's debate is to build from bottom up, right? It's to start telling people that it's okay to embrace who you are. If I'm not traditionally feminine, which clearly I'm not. We talk about the problems of me wanting to pursue my competitiveness argumentativeness or argumentativeness, I should be allowed to do so without being scared that everybody's going to judge me for who I am. And that's something that we think is very important in today's debate, right? Now, to my last subclash point, right, on the concept of the impact of the backlashes we have to the society. Because we think this is something that science has also ignored in today's debate, right? Because we've proposed to you that the social construct that exists right now cannot be broken if you continue to give preference to the qualities that are traditionally viewed as male or female in the first place. We think that Psi opposition has dismissed most of our arguments based on the fact that they don't think that our status quo was set up properly. They didn't really engage with the fact that we have established a status quo and given examples to substantiate the fact that society today does have a problem, and these feminine features and male features are problems are not something that we built up, right? They're something that has materialized in today's debate. The whole argument, an example of our Prime Minister is something that's actually true. No one is looking at the fact that she's dealing with political pressure and governing a country that's completely corrupted in a very calm and collective way. But they're rather focusing on how hot she is. That is completely ridiculous. Because of all these reasons, we probably like to propose. Thank you.
I thank the government whip for her speech. I call upon the opposition whip to give its speech in 7 minutes. Hear, hear.
It's extremely interesting that today's paradigm coming from the affirmative is full of assumptions that has never been substantiated. Assumption 1, prop side innocently believes that society is